Hi all, happy today, whatever that day may be. I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and in this indie highlight, I want to show you a super well written and interesting upcoming narrative game called Joy Malignant. Joy Malignant is a short dice-based RPG developed by Petros Anastasiadis, in which your choices shape your skills and appearance. I love this approach to the protagonist not only determining the outcome of the story, but also the protagonist's own self. Their choices literally determine what they look like and how good or bad they are with certain skills. The dice-based system is something similar to Citizen Sleeper, for those who have played it. If you haven't, then it's fairly simple. You have a number of dice rolls, or in this case masks, per day that are more likely to cause a positive, neutral, or negative outcome when used on a skill check. You get to choose which skill checks to apply these to, so you can increase your chances to succeed if there's a task you really need to complete quickly, and you can use the more negative rolls on something safer or less important, such as getting a bit of extra money by doing some chores. For me, in Citizen Sleeper, that didn't really work because the writing just wasn't engaging enough, so dice rolls ended up feeling extra limiting. However, in Joy Malignant, I think they work very well to reinforce this idea of a fragmented and faded or fading sense of self that uses masking to interact with the world. Your character is a blank slate whose memories and feelings have been removed, and you essentially need to interact with the world and make choices in order to gain a new self while trying to figure out what happened to the city and to you. The writing of this game is also just really, really good. The story and world building are what really caught my attention in addition to your choices shaping your character. The city of Viseria was cursed potentially by a mostly forgotten god and separated from the rest of the world by being raised above it. The curse is that all of the city's inhabitants, as well as everything else in the city, takes on the appearance of people's past experiences, traumas, guilt, and shame. People have become mosaics of different pieces that depict their most important traits and perhaps greatest sources of shame. This not only makes for great opportunities for interesting stories, since the people in the city can't hide the unsavory parts of themselves, but it also just makes the characters look very cool and weird. Like Nib, who looks like a cool punk mouse musician, and Cynthia, a pretty cat lady coming out of a tulip holding a deck of cards. I won't explain what all of these mosaic parts of the characters mean, because I think it's way better for you to experience the whole thing for yourself and form your own idea and opinion of the characters as you go through the story. Obviously, there's some contextual spoilers from the gameplay footage, but I did my best to only show some bits and pieces so that you still have things to discover if you decide to give the demo a try. I really love the writing style of Joy Malignant. It's stylistic and descriptive enough to get your gears turning, but it's concise enough that you never feel like skimming through the text, which I think is very important for narrative RPGs. The imagery of the descriptions is evocative, and combined with the game's visual style, it gives you a lot of interesting images you put together in your own mind, similar to what the best fiction does in literature. I actually asked Petros, the dev, a few questions about the game, so let me share with you this short dev interview. The first question is related to the story and world building mostly, though of course the game on the whole as well. What are the main inspirations behind Joy Malignant? There's a ton of inspirations. The main one is Citizen Sleeper, of course, and stylistically Disco Elysium and Hylix. Another game that inspired the story is Pentiment. The story itself was more inspired by books, particularly Charles Bukowski's novels, Frank Herbert's Last Exit to Brooklyn. Both this and Bukowski really delve into living as a lowlife, working terrible jobs and so on, and have very real, dark, and in a way funny stories. Terry Pratchett's Small Gods also inspired a lot of the religion stuff. How long have you been working on the game, and have you made other games before this one that people should be aware of? I have been working on the game for 5 months. I started working on it right after graduating from Games Uni and had a deadline of 6 months to release because I have to do mandatory military service in August as I am Greek. The other notable game I've made is Underfishing, which is a free little hellish fishing game on Steam. There's a ton of stuff on my itch.io, but Joy Malignant is my first commercial game and by far my biggest release. The fact that Petros managed to make something this good and polished in just 5 months, 6 by the time the game releases, is utterly bonkers. I think Joy Malignant is going to blow up and everyone's going to love it. When Petros returns from his mandatory military service, people will be begging for more games from him. By the way, I've included a link to both Underfishing and Petros' itch.io page in the description if you're interested in looking at his other smaller games. Next question, one that I imagine many people are curious about. How long do you expect the playtime of Joy Malignant to be, and are there multiple endings and achievements? I expect the game will take around 3 hours to complete, can be done faster if you skip content, or a bit longer if you take your time. To match this playtime, the price of the game will be around $9 US. There are multiple endings based on your choices, but the more important part is that at the end, every player has a unique mosaic of pieces that is theirs. There will be Steam achievements as well. Most of them should be unlockable by playing the game normally, but a few will require more playthroughs and different paths. So do of course keep in mind that Joy Malignant has far more to offer than just 3 hours of playtime for one playthrough. There's interesting things to explore here related to the stories of various places and characters in the city, as well as your character's journey as they create their own mosaic and leave their mark. I also asked Petros who else contributed to the project that he would like to shout out. Here are the other cool people who added stuff to the game. The composers are 2 amazing students who volunteered to help, Eloine Richon and Jared Salmon. They each individually contributed a few songs to the soundtrack. I actually asked Petros about who composed the music when I left feedback about the game because I loved it so much. The other person Petros wanted to shout out is the key artist Lucas Fayao at the Fayao on Twitter/X. He created the game's capsule art, and Petros found him through some Disco Elysium fanart that Lucas did and knew that it would be perfect for the game's capsule. And clearly, he did not disappoint. I think Joy Malignant's capsule art is perfect and suggests exactly what kind of game this is. Thank you to Petros for answering my questions, and I hope you all enjoyed this mini dev interview. Let's talk in a bit more detail about the gameplay. Your character starts as a blank slate, someone without memories or experiences. There isn't a level up system where you specifically choose stats to upgrade for your character. All of the bonuses and penalties you get added to your skill checks come directly from the choices you make in the story, because they shape your mosaic pieces, which are a representation of your character's self, adding bonuses and penalties to certain stats, but in a way, these mosaic pieces also act as your equipment. There's a head piece, a torso piece, 2 hand pieces, and a bottom piece. You aren't able to add or remove them at will, since they literally make up your character's self as it is seen by themselves and others, but they can be changed by your choices, and sometimes a mosaic piece can break if your ego meter goes below 0. I think that for many shorter narrative RPGs, it makes perfect sense to not have a level up system with experience points, and instead let the player's abilities result out of their choices, or for example like in Pentiment, you get to choose your character's background and certain favorite university subjects and hobbies and so on. XP has always been such an artificial way to show a character's progress and increase in abilities. It works all right for tabletop and more combat-heavy games, though even in something like D&D, a lot of people use the milestone system to level up instead of XP, because it feels far more natural to use when focusing on narrative arcs. I'm definitely taking notes on this choice-based progression system that Joy Malignant has for potential narrative games of my own in the future. You have 2 resource meters or bars to manage related to your character: Ego, the red one with a skull at the bottom, and Luster, the yellow one with a brain with a lightning bolt coming out of it. Ego represents the strength of your character's existence. It will deplete in small amounts when sleeping and going through traumatic or particularly negative experiences. If it reaches 0, one of your mosaic pieces will break, lowering your skills until the meter is refilled and thus the mosaic piece is repaired. To replenish your ego, you need to assemble 3 mirror pieces in a home location. That will bring it back to full. Mirror pieces are a fairly rare resource, however, so you do need to be somewhat careful with just how much you damage your ego. Luster represents your character's energy for life, which depletes when sleeping or performing demanding actions. It can be replenished by performing actions like eating, drinking, walking, generally fun or fulfilling things. If Luster reaches 0, all Luster damage your character takes from certain actions will be dealt to Ego instead. The stats your character can use when performing skill check actions are Hubris, Compassion, Rationality, Masochism, and Competence. I think this is a very interesting set of skills that's not really the classic spread you find in games. Even Disco Elysium is far more standard than this, and I thought that one was quite wacky when it came out. I really like the choice of these skills because they help reinforce the themes of the game's story, very much related to personhood, struggle, and sins or vices. In order to perform an action that has a skill check, you must consume a mask. You have a limited amount of masks each day that show up at the top of your screen, and they are randomly determined at the start of the day. They can be happy, neutral, or sad, and give you higher chances of a successful, neutral, or negative outcome, respectively, when applied to a skill check. I like the concept and visuals of the masks far more than dice, and it works really well, especially in the context of a story that has to do with figuring out who you are and constructing a particular image of the self, as well as interacting with the world in particular ways, trying to be perceived by others in a certain fashion. The way you interact with the world is through dialogue and skill checks. In dialogue, you make choices based on what you want to say and do without needing to use your masks. When performing specific actions, however, you will be using one of your masks. Your bonuses and penalties to the skill related to that action also affects the chance for a certain outcome. More likely to be positive if you have bonuses, more likely to be negative if you have penalties. I also noticed that some actions are deemed safe and others are dangerous or risky, which I believe is related to whether performing those actions will cause any damage to your ego or luster meters. In order to progress through quests and tasks, you have to fill up various progress meters by succeeding at certain actions and/or obtain certain items needed for that task. Time also needs to pass for certain story beats to progress, and you pass time generally by sleeping, which brings about another day. One thing I forgot to mention earlier in relation to your ego meter and the masks you use to perform skill checks is that you can actually reset your masks by pushing yourself instead of sleeping. But that damages your ego quite a bit, so it's not really recommended other than in an extreme situation if you really want to be able to complete a task within a certain time limit or something of the sort. There are also certain actions outside of dialogue that you can perform without needing to consume a mask, such as purchasing something with coins called shrieks, trading or submitting an item for a task, and restoring your ego with the 3 mirror pieces. The dice rolling system obviously isn't quite dice rolling since you are using those masks that have certain percentages related to the different outcomes, plus or minus whatever your character's skill is. There aren't any critical successes or failures, which I very much approve of because those are literally just luck and have nothing to do with your character's choices. I think having some element of uncertainty coming from having to use these different masks and not always being able to succeed at something is actually a positive element of the gameplay because it works well in combination with the game's world. You are in a cursed city where even just daily life is a struggle for most. Your character has a dwindling sense of self that they are struggling to construct and maintain out of their choices and whatever bits and pieces of comfort they can find in this harsh world. So it makes perfect sense that even with a happy mask, you may still not get as good of an outcome as you expect. But human resilience and strength is also an important theme that shines through the struggles of the characters in Viseria, so the opposite is also true. You may get a better outcome than expected even when using a sad mask, even when your character is having a bad time. I think overall the entire gameplay system is well thought out, and limiting the player's stats to only come from their choices avoids some of the min-maxing issues that can occur in narrative RPGs. For example, if you allow a player to increase their stats manually, they may try to figure out which is the best stat to increase. Or if there is all sorts of different pieces of gear to equip, they'll equip the ones that give them the highest chances of success for a particular skill check, then equip something else for the next check, and just switch items and clothes willy-nilly, which results in my opinion in quite a silly image of the protagonist changing their clothes in the middle of the street randomly before talking to someone. In my opinion, this kind of player behavior takes away a lot of the immersion and role-playing aspect of a narrative RPG, so Joy Malignant manages to maintain the focus on its themes and story by making the player character's stats come directly from narrative choices. Another positive thing I want to shout out is that I didn't see any manual save system, but the game autosaves extremely often, I think probably after each action or dialogue is completed. This helps prevent save scumming, which is also a huge issue in a lot of RPGs that have dice rolls or some element of randomness in skill checks. Like this, you also get to live with the consequences of your choices and actions, even if you may not like them. And you'll get to see by the end of the game the mosaic you've built for your character, as well as how your choices affected the rest of the city. It's really difficult sometimes to resist the temptation of save scumming, so I very much appreciate that there's just autosaves, and whatever ends up happening in your playthrough is just what happens, and you have to keep moving forward. Moving on to the visuals and sound. The visuals are super interesting. I'd describe them as psychedelic, also reminding me a little of the art that we see in the Thought Cabinet in Disco Elysium, or the visual style of the first-person game Dread Delusion, if you've played that. I think the art style fits the themes of the game perfectly, in particular the themes of struggle, identity, guilt, shame, punishment. I particularly like the look of the characters, which have these interesting mosaic pieces depicting their past and their traits. The visuals help represent and heighten the emotions and general atmosphere that such a story and world are supposed to have. The UI looks very nice as well and matches the rest of the visuals. The font is well chosen and very readable, which is super important in a text-heavy game. There isn't too much text, as I've already said. The writing is concise enough while still being evocative, but the font and text size do also very much matter for the player's reading experience, and this felt very comfortable to read. I very much prefer a dark background with light text, and we've seen this tends to be the case in many narrative RPGs like Disco Elysium, Esoteric Ebb, and Citizen Sleeper, so that was great for me. Overall, just a very cohesive, dreamlike visual style for the characters, environment, and UI, which serves the narrative and atmosphere very well. The music really surprised me because it's not just good, but actually pretty damn amazing. It hit me right from the main menu and I was like, hold on, this music sounds really cool, I have to know who made it. So I actually asked Petros to tell me who composed the music. Already mentioned the composers during the dev interview section earlier, but I'll remind you again, they are 2 students named Elohim Rishon and Jared Salmon. Big props to them for understanding the assignment perfectly and making great music. The soundtrack reminds me a little bit of the music from Disco Elysium in the sense that it has that dreamlike and maybe slightly philosophical or distant feel to it. So yeah, the music is really cool, and this is fairly rare in my experience. Most games have music that's just okay, kind of nice, but it's just kind of there to provide background noise instead of being a significant element that complements the experience. Finally, as part of the conclusions, I'll mention a couple of smaller things that didn't require their own section. The performance of the game is great. I didn't encounter any bugs whatsoever, no crashes, no issues with any quests, no visual glitches either. At most, there were a couple of missing quotation marks in some dialogues, but otherwise the text was perfectly written without typos or anything of the sort. Joy Malignant is participating in the Steam Next Fest, and it has a demo up, so if you'd like to check it out, you can go play the demo right now. I do really recommend it, and you'd definitely be helping the dev out, even if you just play the demo for a little bit, since Steam does take into consideration the amount of people who play the demo for visibility. Joy Malignant has so far been an amazing narrative experience, even just from the demo, so you'll probably love it too, just like I do, if you enjoy narrative CRPGs like Disco Elysium, Esoteric Ebb, Rue Valley, Citizen Sleeper, Pentiment, and so on. If you're wondering whether the text is voice acted, it is not. But because the text isn't too dense, there shouldn't be any issues to read it. I do also think that because the appearances of the characters are so strange due to the mosaics, it may actually be better that they aren't voice acted, because it lets you imagine whatever voice you think suits the character. Obviously, this is also a small project of a solo dev who only had 6 months to make it before having to do mandatory military service, so things like voice acting, even if in a longer project may be a consideration, just can't be a thing. I still recommend trying the game out, even if you're the type to only play RPGs that are voice acted, because the writing is really easy to read and very engaging, so I don't think you'll get bored. I'll remind you what Petros said about the playtime, replayability, and price. One playthrough should last about 3 hours depending on what actions you take and what content you complete or skip. There are multiple endings and very different mosaics that your character ends up having at the end of the game. There are Steam achievements, some of which require multiple playthroughs, and the price of the game will be around $9 US, which I think is a great price for a smaller narrative RPG like this. I'm going to absolutely buy and review Joy Malignant when it comes out on the 29th of July, just a bit over a month from now. So do expect a more thorough review of the game from me then. It will obviously have some light spoilers when I discuss the story, but I'll try to keep it mostly spoiler-free so that you can experience it for yourself if you like. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at Joy Malignant. If you liked what you saw and are curious to try it out for yourself, go play the demo on Steam, link in the description. A special thank you to my members. I appreciate all of you so much. If you want to support me, subscribing and becoming a member are the most helpful, but of course only if you want to and can afford it. I always appreciate it, even if you just like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a kind comment. This has been B-Tier Mutineer. I wish you a happy rest of your day or evening. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.